My mom threw me out at 16 to raise her new kids. Now that I'm rich, she demands I pay for their college, but what happened on my porch changed all. Picture this, a freezing Nanaimo night, the wind biting your skin, and your own mother, the woman who gave you life, stands on your porch, screaming, "You're a disgrace. Pay for your siblings' college, you heartless bastard." She threw you out at 16, left you to rot, built a new family, and forgot you existed. Now she's back, clawing at your hard-earned life, spitting venom like you owe her for the years she abandoned you. The betrayal cuts deeper than any knife, the pain so raw it chokes you. How dare she? That night on my porch still burns in my chest, but let me take you back to where it all started. I'm Ethan McKay, 33 years old, a senior manager at an energy company in Vancouver. I wasn't always here, though. I grew up in Nanaimo, a small coastal town in British Columbia, where the air smells of salt and cedar. My mom, Margaret, was a nurse, raising me alone after my dad bailed before I was even born. We lived in a cramped apartment above my grandparents' garage, Gordon and Evelyn. They were my rock, always there with a warm meal or a story about fishing on the Strait of Georgia. Mom worked long shifts at the hospital, but back then, she'd still make time for me. We'd grab Timbits from Tim Hortons, or she'd cheer me on at my hockey games, her voice echoing across the rink. "Go, Ethan, go," she'd yell, proud as anything. Those moments felt like home, But everything changed when I was 8. Mom met Greg, a construction engineer with a steady job and a smile that never reached his eyes. "He's different," she said, her voice all dreamy. I wanted to believe her. They dated for a few years, got married when I was 11, and moved us into a modest house on Departure Bay Road. Greg wasn't cruel, but he wasn't warm either. He'd nod at me, say, "Hey, kid," and that was it, like I was just part of the furniture. I tried to fit in, lacing up my skates for hockey practice, hoping Mom would notice. But her eyes were on Greg now, her laughter saved for him. I'd sit at the dinner table, picking at my food, while they planned their future, a future that felt like it didn't include me. The sting of being invisible started creeping in, and deep down, I knew something worse was coming. The sting of those early years in Nanaimo still lingers, but what came next carved a wound that never fully healed. By the time I was 8, Mom, Margaret, had fallen hard for Greg, the construction engineer who'd swept into our lives like a cold wind off the Pacific. They got married when I was 11, and we moved into that house on Departure Bay Road, a small 2-bedroom place with creaky floors and a view of the ferries gliding across the strait. At first, I thought it might be okay. Greg wasn't mean, just distant, like I was some kid he had to tolerate. He'd grunt, pass the salt, at dinner, and that was the extent of our bonding. Mom, though, she changed. The woman who used to cheer at my hockey games, her voice booming over the Nanaimo Ice Center, started fading. She'd come home from the hospital, exhausted, and her eyes would skip right over me to Greg. "How was your day, hon?" she'd ask him, while I sat there, picking at my shepherd's pie, waiting for a glance that never came. I tried to keep up, you know. I'd lace up my skates for hockey practice, pushing myself to score goals, thinking maybe a trophy would make her notice me again. I'd bring home report cards with straight A's from Ballina Secondary, hoping she'd say, "Good job, Ethan," like she used to. But those moments were gone, replaced by her planning date nights with Greg at the keg or whispering about their future over coffee at Tim Hortons. I'd overhear them at night, their voices low through the thin walls, talking about buying a bigger house, maybe starting a family. A family? What was I, then? Just a leftover from her old life? The question gnawed at me, a dull ache that grew sharper every day. When I was 12, everything shifted into overdrive. Mom came home one day, her face glowing, and announced she was pregnant, with twins. Greg grinned like he'd won the lottery, and even I felt a spark of excitement. "I'm gonna be a big brother," I told myself, picturing teaching them to skate or showing them how to fish off the Nanaimo seawall like Grandpa Gordon taught me. I started babysitting for neighbors, saving up loonies and toonies to buy them little hockey jerseys. I wanted to be the cool older brother, someone they'd look up to. But as Mom's belly grew, so did the distance between us. She stopped coming to my games, saying, "I'm too tired, Ethan." Our trips to White Spot for burgers and milkshakes. Done. Even our little rituals, like watching hockey night in Canada together, vanished. It was like I was fading from her world, inch by inch, and no amount of trying could pull her back. I doubled down, desperate to matter. I'd scrub the kitchen floor, mow the tiny lawn, anything to hear her say I was worth something. But she'd just nod absently, her mind on diaper brands or cribs for the twins. Greg wasn't any better. One night, I tried joining their conversation at dinner, talking about a goal I'd scored. "That's nice, kid," he said, not even looking up from his plate. Mom didn't even react. I sat there, my fork frozen midair, feeling like I was screaming into a void. Am I even here? I wanted to shout. The house felt smaller every day, like the walls were closing in, and I was the one being squeezed out. Then the twins arrived, Emma and Liam. They were tiny, loud, and took over everything. I got it, babies need attention. But this wasn't just about being busy. Mom and Greg built a whole new universe around Emma and Liam, and I wasn't in it. Family dinners? Replaced by bottles and diaper changes. My bedroom, a corner of the living room with a curtain, became a storage space for baby stuff. I'd come home from school, stepping over strollers and toys, and Mom would snap, "Ethan, watch where you're walking," like I was the problem. One night, I overheard her talking to Greg. "The twins are our fresh start." Fresh start? My heart sank to my boots. I was 13, and already, I was the past she wanted to erase. The worst part? I kept trying. I'd stay up late doing homework, aiming for perfect grades, thinking maybe she'd see me again. I'd offer to watch the twins, change diapers, anything to feel like I belonged. But nothing worked. Mom's eyes, once warm when she tucked me in, were now blank when they met mine. Greg's indifference turned sharper, too. "Stop hovering, Ethan," he'd say when I tried to help. Hovering? I was just trying to exist. By 15, I was a ghost in my own home, invisible in a house that used to be mine. The pain wasn't just rejection, it was the slow, crushing realization that my own mother had chosen a new family over me. And what came next would shatter everything. The slow bleed of being invisible in my own home on Departure Bay Road had already carved a hollow in my chest, but nothing could have prepared me for what came next. By the time I was 16, the twins, Emma and Liam, were 3 years old, their laughter filling the house while I faded into the background, sleeping behind a curtain in the living room, surrounded by their toys and cribs. I'd given up hoping Mom, Margaret, would notice my hockey medals or the A's I fought for at Ballina Secondary. Greg's cold stares and Mom's blank glances had become my normal, but I still clung to the idea that things might get better, that maybe I'd find my place in this new family. Then, one rainy November evening in Nanaimo, with the wind howling off the Strait of Georgia, everything shattered. Mom called me into the living room, her voice sharp, like she was summoning a stranger. "Ethan, we need to talk," she said, sitting on the couch next to Greg, who was flipping through a stack of bills. The twins were asleep upstairs, their baby monitor crackling softly. I stood there, my heart pounding, sensing the air in the room was heavy, like the calm before a storm. Greg didn't look at me, just started talking, his voice flat and clinical, like he was reading a script. "Money's tight, kid. The twins' daycare, their medical bills, it's a lot. We've been crunching the numbers, and we can't keep supporting everyone." I blinked, confused. Supporting everyone? I worked weekends at Tim Hortons, paid for my own clothes, my hockey gear, even chipped in for groceries with my measly loonies and toonies. What were they talking about? Then Mom spoke, and her words hit like a slap across the face. "Emma and Liam are our priority now, Ethan. They're young, they need us more. You're 16, you're old enough to figure things out." My stomach dropped, the room spinning. Figure things out? I was still a kid, barely 5'10", still wearing secondhand sneakers from Value Village. I opened my mouth to argue, but the words caught in my throat. Greg leaned forward, his eyes finally meeting mine, cold as the Nanaimo winter. We're selling the house, moving to a smaller place for the twins. There's no room for you, Ethan. It's time you stood on your own. No room? I wanted to scream. This was my home, the only one I'd ever known. I'd spent years tiptoeing around their new family, trying not to be a burden, and now they were tossing me out like garbage. I looked at Mom, desperate for her to say something, anything, to show she still cared. But she just sat there, arms crossed, staring at the floor. It's for the best, she muttered, her voice barely above a whisper. The best? I snapped, my voice cracking with a mix of rage and disbelief. For who, Mom? For you and Greg? For the twins? What about me? She flinched but didn't answer, her silence louder than any words. Greg stood up, towering over me. Don't make this harder than it needs to be, kid. Pack your stuff and go. I felt my hands shake, the anger boiling so hot I could barely breathe. But what was the point of fighting? They'd made their choice, and it wasn't me. I stormed to my corner of the living room, yanking my duffel bag from under a pile of baby blankets. I stuffed in what little I owned, some clothes, my hockey stick, a photo of me and Grandpa Gordon fishing at Piper's Lagoon. My eyes burned, but I refused to let them see me cry. You'll regret this, I said under my breath, not sure if I meant it for them or myself. I slung the bag over my shoulder and walked out into the rain, the door slamming behind me. The cold bit at my face, but it was nothing compared to the ache in my chest. I didn't look back. Where was I supposed to go? I was 16, with $20 in my pocket and a heart full of betrayal. I headed straight to my grandparents' place, a small cedar-shingled house a few kilometers away on Hammond Bay Road. Grandpa Gordon opened the door, his face crumpling when he saw me soaked and shivering. What the hell did she do now? He growled, pulling me inside. Grandma Evelyn wrapped me in a quilt, her hands trembling as she hugged me. Oh, Ethan, my boy, she whispered, tears in her eyes. They didn't hesitate to take me in, but the anger in their voices was raw. She's lost her mind, Grandpa said, pacing the kitchen. Her own son. Grandma wanted to call Mom, to give her a piece of her mind, but I stopped her. It's done, I said, my voice hollow. She doesn't want me. That night, lying on their lumpy couch, I stared at the ceiling, the weight of it all crashing down. My own mother had thrown me away, and the life I'd known was gone. But even in that darkness, a spark of defiance flickered inside me. I wasn't going to let them break me. Walking away from that house on Departure Bay Road, with the rain soaking through my jacket and the weight of my mother's betrayal crushing my chest, I thought I'd hit rock bottom. But the real darkness was still waiting, lurking in the months that followed. At 16, I was living with Grandpa Gordon and Grandma Evelyn in their cedar-shingled house on Hammond Bay Road, a 1,200 square foot refuge that smelled of pine and old coffee. They gave me their lumpy couch and all the love they could muster, but they were retired, scraping by on a fixed pension. I was on my own to survive, and the loneliness of it was a cold, relentless tide, pulling me under. I got a job at the Tim Hortons on Wallace Street, slinging coffee and donuts during the graveyard shift to pay for school supplies and clothes. I'd stumble home at 2 a.m., my hands smelling of burnt coffee, and try to finish my homework for Ballina Secondary under the dim glow of a desk lamp. Sleep was a luxury I couldn't afford. I'd drag myself to class, my eyes heavy, my stomach growling because I'd skipped dinner to save a few bucks. You okay, Ethan? My hockey coach asked one day, noticing my sluggish passes on the ice. Yeah, just tired, I lied, forcing a smile. I couldn't tell him I was drowning, that every day felt like a fight to keep my head above water. The worst wasn't the long hours or the empty wallet, it was the silence from Mom. Margaret didn't call, didn't text, didn't even check if I was alive. I'd hear whispers from cousins about her and Greg, how they'd bought a new SUV and were planning a trip to Tofino with Emma and Liam. A trip I'd never been invited on, not even when I was still under their roof. It was like I'd been erased, a ghost they'd forgotten. I'd walk past our old house sometimes, see the twins' toys scattered on the lawn, and feel a pang so sharp it stole my breath. I wasn't angry at Emma and Liam, they were just kids, but the injustice of it burned. Why was I the one cast aside? At 17, I faced a bigger hurdle, college. I got accepted to the University of British Columbia, a dream I'd held since I was a kid watching Canucks games with Grandpa Gordon. But tuition was thousands of dollars, and my savings from Tim Hortons wouldn't cover a single semester. I swallowed my pride and texted Mom, my fingers shaking as I typed in the kitchen of my grandparents' house. "Hey, I got into UBC. Can you help with tuition or cosign a loan?" I stared at my phone, hoping for a shred of the mother who used to cheer at my games. Hours later, her reply came, cold as a January wind, "We're saving for Emma and Liam's future." Sorry, Ethan. Sorry? That word was a knife, twisting in my gut. I threw my phone across the room, the screen cracking against the wall. "She doesn't care," I whispered to myself, my voice breaking. She never did. That night, I walked to the Nanaimo seawall, the same place Grandpa Gordon taught me to fish. The waves crashed against the rocks, and the cold bit at my face as I sat on a bench, staring out at the dark water of the Strait of Georgia. Tears streamed down my cheeks, unstoppable, as I thought about those days when Mom would pack a picnic for us, laughing as we tossed pebbles into the surf. Why wasn't I enough? I asked the empty night, my voice swallowed by the wind. The pain was unbearable, like my heart was being ripped apart. I wasn't just alone, I was abandoned, discarded by the one person who was supposed to love me no matter what. I sat there for hours, shivering in my thin hoodie, feeling like the world had turned its back on me. But in that darkness, a flicker of hope broke through. My Aunt Sarah, Mom's older sister, called the next morning. "Ethan, I heard about UBC," she said, her voice warm but firm. "I'll co-sign your loan. You're not doing this alone, okay?" I nearly broke down again, but this time it was gratitude, not pain. Sarah didn't have much. She was a single mom raising 2 kids in a small apartment in Parksville, but she believed in me. "You're going places, Ethan," she said. "Don't let anyone make you feel otherwise." Her words were a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. I vowed then and there to prove her right, to fight for a future that was mine, no matter how much it hurt. Mom might have thrown me away, but I wasn't done yet. The cold night on the Nanaimo seawall, with Aunt Sarah's voice pulling me back from the edge, lit a fire in me that refused to die. I was 17, broken but not beaten, and I swore I'd carve out a life that Mom, Margaret, and Greg couldn't touch. At 18, I made a choice that would define me. I joined the Canadian Armed Forces, trading the cramped couch at Grandpa Gordon and Grandma Evelyn's house for a bunk at CFB Esquimalt. Basic training was brutal, 5 a.m. drills, 10-kilometer runs through the rain-soaked trails of Vancouver Island, carrying 30-kilogram packs until my shoulders screamed. But every bead of sweat, every barked order from my sergeant, forged something unbreakable in me. "McKay, push harder," my drill instructor would yell, and I'd grit my teeth, thinking of Mom's cold text, "Sorry, Ethan." That pain drove me. I wasn't just training for the military, I was training to prove I was more than the kid they threw out. At 20, I was deployed to Afghanistan, a world away from Nanaimo's quiet shores. The desert heat hit like a furnace, and the constant threat of danger kept my nerves on edge. I patrolled dusty roads, my heart pounding as we scanned for IEDs, but the discipline I learned kept me steady. I sent letters to Grandma Evelyn, telling her about the stars over Kandahar, brighter than anything I'd seen on the Strait of Georgia. She'd write back, "We're proud of you, Ethan. Keep safe, eh." Those letters were my anchor, reminding me I still had family who cared. Mom, though? Not a word. I'd check my phone during rare moments of downtime, hoping for something, anything, but the screen stayed empty. Meanwhile, I heard through a cousin that Margaret and Greg were posting photos of Emma and Liam at a Canucks game, living their perfect life. The betrayal stung worse than the Afghan sun. When I returned to Canada at 22, I enrolled at the University of British Columbia, thanks to Aunt Sarah's co-signed loan. Vancouver was a shock after Nanaimo, towering skyscrapers, crowded Skitran stations, and rent that ate half my savings. I lived in a 400-square-foot basement suite in East Vancouver, the walls damp and the heat barely working. To cover bills, I worked nights at a warehouse, unloading crates until my back ached, then dragged myself to 8 a.m. classes at UBC. "You look wrecked, man," my classmate Ryan said one day, tossing me a coffee from JJ Bean. "Just keeping up, I replied, hiding the exhaustion. I studied business, taught myself coding on the side, and started freelancing for local startups, building websites for $50 a pop. Sleep was a memory, but every dollar I earned felt like a middle finger to the family that discarded me. By 25, I landed a job at a small energy company in Vancouver's Gastown, starting as a data analyst. I poured everything into it, staying late, tackling projects no one else wanted, learning the ins and outs of the industry. My boss, Linda, noticed. "You've got grit, Ethan," she said after I presented a cost-saving plan that saved the company $100,000. A year later, I was promoted to project manager, then senior manager by 28. I paid off my student loans, moved into a one-bedroom condo in Kitsilano, with a view of English Bay that made my heart ache for Nanaimo's simpler shores. I'd walk along the seawall there, the same name but a world apart, and feel a quiet pride. I'd done this, built a life from nothing, no thanks to Margaret or Greg. But the scars didn't fade. One night, scrolling through Instagram on my phone, I stumbled across Mom's profile. There she was, smiling with Greg, Emma, and Liam at Whistler, their faces glowing under the ski resort's lights. No trace of me, not even a mention. I slammed my phone down, the old pain roaring back. How do they just move on? I muttered to myself, pacing my condo. I'd fought through war zones, worked 80-hour weeks, and clawed my way up, while they lived like I'd never existed. I blocked her account that night, vowing to keep them out of my head. Aunt Sarah was my rock, calling to check in, always saying, "You're doing us proud, Ethan." Her faith kept me going, but the void Mom left still burned. I thought I was free, but what came next would drag me right back into the fire. I'd built a life from the ashes of Mom's betrayal, clawing my way from a Tim Hortons shift worker to a senior manager in Vancouver's Gastown, with a condo in Kitsilano and a view of English Bay that reminded me how far I'd come. At 30, I thought I'd left the pain of Nanaimo behind, buried under years of sweat, deployments to Afghanistan, and late nights at UBC. But Margaret and Greg had a way of dragging me back into the fire. It started with a news article in the Vancouver Sun, profiling our company's renewable energy project. My name, Ethan McKay, was mentioned, along with my title and a photo of me shaking hands with the CEO. I didn't think much of it, just another day at the office. But somehow, that article reached Mom, and it lit a fuse I didn't see coming. One gray February morning, I was in a boardroom on West Cordova Street presenting a $2 million project to a room full of suits, when my assistant, Priya, burst in, her face pale. "Ethan, there's a situation at reception," she whispered urgently. I excused myself, heart racing, and stepped into the lobby of our sleek, glass-walled office. There they were, Margaret and Greg, standing by the front desk, their voices loud enough to echo off the 10-meter-high ceilings. Mom's face was red, her arms flailing as she shouted at the receptionist. "I'm his mother. I demand to see Ethan McKay right now." Greg stood behind her, arms crossed, glaring like he owned the place. My stomach twisted, the old wound ripping open. After 14 years of silence, they had the gall to show up at my work? I strode over, my dress shoes clicking on the marble floor, trying to keep my composure. "What are you doing here?" I asked, my voice low but sharp. Mom spun around, her eyes narrowing. "Ethan, we need to talk. Now." Her tone was demanding, like I was still the 16-year-old she'd thrown out. Greg stepped forward, his voice dripping with condescension. "Heard you're doing well, kid. About time you gave back to the family." I blinked, stunned. Gave back? The audacity hit like a slap. Gave back? I snapped, my fists clenching. You kicked me out with $20 and a duffel bag. What family are you talking about? Mom's voice rose, shrill and accusing. Don't play the victim, Ethan. We raised you, sacrificed everything, and now you're some hotshot manager acting like we don't exist? Emma and Liam need to go to university, and you're going to help pay for it. I laughed, a bitter, hollow sound that echoed in the lobby. You're joking, right? You didn't raise me, you erased me. I built this life in spite of you, not because of you. Greg smirked, leaning closer. Watch it, kid. You owe us. Family helps family, and you're not above us just because you've got a fancy office now. My blood boiled. Owe them? After they left me to fend for myself at 16? The receptionist, Jenny, tried to intervene. Sir, should I call security? She asked, her voice shaky. Mom spun on her, practically spitting. Don't you dare. This is a family matter. The lobby was filling up now, colleagues peering out from their offices, clients waiting for meetings, all watching this circus unfold. I felt the weight of their stares, my professional world colliding with the chaos of my past. You need to leave, I said, my voice steady but burning with rage. You don't get to walk in here and demand anything from me. Mom's face twisted, and she stepped closer, jabbing a finger at me. You're a selfish, ungrateful veteran, Ethan. You've got money now, and you'll pay for your siblings' tuition, or I'll make sure everyone knows what a disgrace you are. That was it. The dam broke. A disgrace? I roared, my voice shaking the glass walls. You threw your own son out for your new family. You don't get to waltz in here and guilt me. Greg grabbed Mom's arm, muttering, "Let's go, Margaret," but she yanked free, tears streaming down her face. You'll regret this, Ethan, she screamed as security escorted them out, their voices fading into the Vancouver rain. I stood there, chest heaving, the lobby silent except for the hum of the HVAC. Priya touched my arm gently. You okay, Ethan? She asked. I nodded, but inside, the pain and rage churned. They thought they could break me again, but I wasn't that kid anymore. What came next, though, would push me to the edge. The chaos of Margaret and Greg's ambush at my office in Gastown shook me, but I thought I'd drawn a line they wouldn't dare cross again. I was wrong. A week later, on a damp March evening in Vancouver, I pulled into the driveway of my Kitsilano condo, the rain pattering against my windshield like it was trying to warn me. As I stepped out, my boots splashing in 2 centimeters of water, I froze. There she was, Margaret, pacing on my porch, her face a storm darker than the clouds above English Bay. The sight of her, after 14 years of silence and that humiliating scene at work, lit a rage in my chest so fierce I could barely hold it in. This was my home, my hard-earned refuge, and she had no right to invade it. What the hell are you doing here? I shouted, my voice cutting through the drizzle. Margaret stopped pacing, her eyes locking onto mine, wild and unhinged. You think you can just ignore me, Ethan? She screamed, her voice echoing down the quiet street. You owe us. Emma and Liam deserve a future, and you're going to give it to them. The audacity of it, her standing on my porch, demanding money after throwing me out at 16, felt like a punch to the gut. Oh you? I roared back, stepping closer, my fists clenched. You kicked me out with nothing. You built a new family and forgot I existed. You don't get to show up now and play the victim. Margaret's face twisted, and she jabbed a finger at me, her voice rising to a hysterical pitch. I sacrificed everything for you, you ungrateful brat. I worked double shifts at the hospital, kept you fed, and this is how you repay me? By turning your back on your own siblings? I laughed, a bitter, jagged sound that startled even me. Sacrificed? You call abandoning your son a sacrifice? I was 16, Mom. I lived on my grandparents' couch, worked at Tim Hortons to survive, while you and Greg took Emma and Liam to Tofino. My voice cracked, the pain of those years spilling out like blood from a fresh wound. She didn't back down. Instead, she stepped off the porch, closing the distance between us, her eyes blazing. "You're a disgrace, Ethan McKay," she shrieked, loud enough to draw neighbors to their windows. "A selfish veteran hoarding your money while your family struggles." That word, disgrace, hit like a bullet, echoing the insults she'd hurled at my office. I felt my control slipping, the years of hurt and anger surging to the surface. "You don't get to call me that," I yelled, my voice shaking the air. "You're the one who threw me away like trash. You're no mother to me, you're a stranger." Margaret lunged forward, her hands clawing for my phone as I pulled it out to call the police. "Don't you dare," she screamed, her nails grazing my wrist. "You won't call the cops on your own mother." I yanked my arm back, holding the phone out of reach. "Stay back, Margaret," I warned, my heart pounding. The street was alive now, neighbors stepping onto their porches, one shouting, "Leave him alone." Another, an older man named Tom from across the street, yelled, "I'm calling 911. Margaret didn't stop, her voice a frantic wail. "You owe us, Ethan. You owe your family." I stood my ground, the rain soaking my jacket, and said, cold as ice, "You're not my family. You haven't been for 14 years. The wail of sirens cut through the night, red and blue lights flashing as a Vancouver police cruiser pulled up. Two officers stepped out, their boots splashing in the puddles. "What's going on here?" one asked, eyeing Margaret's wild expression. She turned on them, pointing at me. "He's my son, and he's refusing to help his family." The officer looked at me, and I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside, "She's trespassing. I want her gone." Margaret's face crumpled, and she screamed, "You'll regret this, Ethan," as the officers escorted her to their car, her voice fading into the rain. I stood on my porch, chest heaving, as neighbors whispered and the cruiser drove off. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order at the Vancouver courthouse, determined to keep her out of my life for good. But even as I signed the papers, I knew this wasn't the end. Something else was coming, something I never saw coming. The rain-soaked night on my Kitsilano porch, with Margaret's screams fading under the wail of police sirens, felt like the final nail in the coffin of a relationship that had died 14 years ago. I thought I'd closed that door for good, locking away the pain of being thrown out at 16, the sting of Mom's cold rejection, and the rage of her demands for Emma and Liam's college tuition. At 30, standing in my hard-earned Vancouver condo, I believed I'd built a life free from her shadow. But then, a week after the restraining order, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Hey, it's Emma. I'm sorry about Mom. Can we talk? I want to know my brother." My heart stopped. Emma, one of the twins I'd barely known, was reaching out. I hesitated, the memories of Mom's betrayal still raw. Was this a trick? Another way for Margaret to claw her way back? But Emma's words felt different, unguarded. I replied, and we agreed to meet at a Tim Hortons in Nanaimo, a 90-minute ferry ride from Vancouver. Sitting in that familiar coffee shop on Nickel Street, the smell of fresh Timbits and brewed coffee pulling me back to my teenage years, I saw Emma walk in. She was 17 now, tall with Mom's eyes but none of her venom. "Ethan," she said softly, sitting across from me, her hands fidgeting with a napkin. "I didn't know what Mom and Greg did to you. Not until recently. I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked, and I saw genuine pain in her eyes, not the manipulation I'd feared. Emma told me she and Liam had grown up hearing half-truths, that I'd left to be independent, that I didn't want to be part of the family. But as she got older, she pieced it together from cousins and overheard arguments. "It wasn't right," she said, her voice firm. "You were just a kid, and they pushed you out. I want to know you, Ethan, not because of Mom, but because you're my brother." I swallowed hard, the walls I'd built around my heart trembling. "I don't blame you or Liam," I said, my voice low. "You didn't choose this. But it's hard to open that door again." She nodded, tears welling up. "I get it. I just hope we can start somewhere." That conversation was a crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. I realized Emma and Liam weren't my enemies, they were caught in Margaret and Greg's selfishness, just like I was. I'm still cautious, but we've been texting, small steps towards something new. Sitting on that ferry back to Vancouver, watching the Strait of Georgia glide by, I felt a quiet hope I hadn't known in years. Family isn't blood, it's the people who show up, who see you. Aunt Sarah, Grandpa Gordon, Grandma Evelyn, they're my family. And maybe, just maybe, Emma can be too. Here's what I've learned: you don't owe anyone who hurts you, no matter what they call themselves. Protect your peace, build your life with those who value you, and let go of the guilt others try to chain you with. I've fought through war zones, heartbreak, and betrayal to stand where I am today, and I'm not looking back. If this story hit you, if you've ever had to draw a line with someone you loved, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below, give this video a like, and subscribe to True North Courage. Let's keep sharing stories that matter, stories of strength and healing, right here in Canada.